Minute, but I'm back. You're welcome. So today we're going to be reacting to how Bitcoin will hit $1,000,000 by 2030. And I thought this was an interesting video and I figured I'd react to it, check it out with you guys. So without further ado, let's get into that right now.
In today's video, I want to seriously consider this crazy idea that Bitcoin will reach $1 million a coin by 2030. And this isn't even my idea. One of the world's most respected hedge fund managers, Cathie Wood, believes that this will happen. Billionaire co-founder of PayPal, Peter Thiel, agrees with her. There are so many others, billionaires like Elon Musk, Jack Dorsey, Mike Novogratz, the Winklevoss twins, who all believe this crazy theory is possible.
I'm not gonna lie, that's a good crowd to be in. If everybody's saying it'll happen, I mean, we'll see. First of all, who has Bitcoin too? That's a good question we should start off with, because I did have some. I bought some when it was at about $4,000. I think I bought about $500, and obviously I sold probably for like $600-700 for a $200 profit. Obviously, I wish I would have kept it, but it is what it is.
Now, before you laugh this idea off and say, not gonna happen, let me share with you some data, some facts, and statistics that supports this theory, because the idea of the $1 million Bitcoin is based on another idea, which is scarcity. Now, there's only ever supposed to be 21 million Bitcoins in all of existence, but it will take us another 118 years before we mine all the Bitcoins and before all 21 million actually exist. That will take us to the year 2140. But as of today, over 90% of Bitcoin's entire supply already exists. It will take us over a century to get access to just the other 10%. But here's what's crazier. If all the world's millionaires decided to buy just one Bitcoin, they wouldn't be able to, because there's not enough to go around. According to Credit Suisse, as of 2020, there are roughly 56 million millionaires around the world, which means each millionaire would only be able to buy a little over a third of a Bitcoin, which is technically wrong, because as of today, there's more millionaires, and more importantly, roughly 20% of Bitcoin's entire supply has been lost forever. Something like 4 million Bitcoin.
Jesus Christ. You know how y'all are losing it? It's just from people not remembering their keys and stuff. And I think that's one of the most unfortunate things about cryptocurrency, because if you had your money in a bank or something like that, you wouldn't just up and lose it because you didn't have your ID. Like, you know, that's me. I should be able to show you my ID and the keys get reset, but I'm not the genius behind this technology, so what do I know?
Will never be recovered, which means the real supply of Bitcoin is closer to 17 million, which makes it that much more scarce. So in today's video, I want to talk about some of these facts.
But I also think that's interesting, because I've seen a couple videos like this with guys talking about like it being scarce, but at the same time, it's so many different cryptocurrencies. So at the end of the day, like if Bitcoin is scarce, I'll just buy some Ethereum or Ripple or one of the other investments. So I think it's interesting because they're all different cryptocurrencies with different projects that do different things.
Facts and data points that support this crazy theory of the $1 million Bitcoin by 2030. I'm excited. Let's get right into it. Hi, my name is Andre Chick. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the crypto. So right now, Bitcoin is worth about $42,000 and its market cap about $800 billion.
39.
Here's what it's gonna take for us to get to $1 million Bitcoin. We would need to 25 times our investment, and the market cap at that point would be worth closer to $20 trillion, which is an insane amount of money. Just for reference, here's what $1 billion looks like next to a couch and a group of people.
I want to say the United States, we owe about $25 trillion. So that would probably be the equivalent to us owing the same amount of, having the same amount of money in Bitcoin as the money the United States owes debt-wise. So I'm gonna check it.
People. That's a lot of money, but it's not a trillion. Here's what $1 trillion looks like next to the White House and a football field. It's also a pretty accurate representation of how much Bitcoin is worth today, rounding up. But that's not.
The U.S. is in $21 trillion in debt after 2020. They probably, it says surpassed 30 trillion. So Bitcoin would be damn near up there with the U.S.'s debt.
20 trillion. We need to get to 20. And incidentally, here's what $20 trillion looks like next to the Statue of Liberty and skyscrapers full of money. That is an insane amount of money.
Jesus.
Credit to Visual Capitalist for the reference, but to go from this to that in just 8 short years seems pretty impossible.
I agree.
But now let me share with you some data about how it might actually happen. The first thing we have to talk about is how much money it actually takes to move the price of Bitcoin, because the idea of the $1 million Bitcoin is flawed if we're looking at it through the lens of market caps like I used to, and I know so many people do. Because even though a market cap is supposed to tell us how much money is in the entire system, it doesn't, and it's kind of confusing.
Okay, let me just stop him right there. So a question that I would have is, because I don't own any Bitcoin anymore, because when it comes to the other cryptos that a lot of people are saying will also be used in the future, there's a possibility, like if say something like I'm invested in Ripple, where I bought it at 20 cents, and say it went to $500, I would make so much more money than compared to if I bought Bitcoin for $40,000 and it went to $1 million. I'd make, what's that, $960,000, which sounds good. But if I bought XRP, say I bought a decent amount of that at $40,000 of that, and that went to like $500, I'd probably be a billionaire. So that's kind of where the rate of return on the Bitcoin, I don't see a lot of people, as it continues to climb the ladder, a lot of people just jumping out and trying to buy more. But I could be wrong.
All a market cap does is it takes the current supply of something and multiplies it by the current price, which is the last known sale price. That's all it does. For example, right now, Bitcoin's market cap is roughly $800 billion. It does not mean, though, that $800 billion worth is inside of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And if Bitcoin goes to zero tomorrow, it does not mean that investors will lose $800 billion worth of value. All it's doing is taking Bitcoin's current price of $42,700 and multiplying it by the current supply outstanding, which is 19 million coins, to get the implied value of $800 billion. The implication, though, is that if you were to sell all 19 million at 42,700, you would get $800 billion, which you wouldn't, because if you were to sell all of it, you would affect the price on the way down.
Yeah.
That's why Bitcoin's value is not its price or its market cap. A perfect example of this is the stock market. Apple's market cap right now is $2.78 trillion. And the way this number is generated is it's taking all of the stocks that are available in total and multiplying them by the current price of Apple to get $2.78 trillion. But it does not mean that Apple has $2.78 trillion worth of stuff. There's also the price.
One might argue that Apple's probably worth more than $2.8 trillion because it's a cash cow. It's always making money. So I think that's pretty interesting. It's got 2.8 trillion in stock, but it's probably worth way more than that.
To earnings ratio, right? Which Apple's right now is over 28, which means investors are paying over 28 times the price of what it's earning per year for the opportunity of investing in Apple, because they expect Apple to grow and make more money in.
I want to say Warren Buffett likes to invest in companies that are at a 15 PE or lower.
The future. It's crazy misleading how this works, but I guess it's kind of like a good magic trick where you see how I'm showing you all these cards right here? Watch. Sometimes less is actually more. That's not a good magic trick, but you get the idea. Right now, you can technically start a $1 billion company with just $1. All it takes is for you to create a company with 1 billion shares outstanding and sell 1 share to someone else for $1, and that would give you the implied value of $1 billion company. Now, Bitcoin does not have a PE ratio because it's not a stock and it's not a company, but the logic is very close, and you don't need as much money as you think to move its price. And the best evidence of this was on December 20, 2020. It all started when Tesla bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. It was then on December 20, 2020, when Elon Musk asked Michael Saylor if it was even possible to buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. And that's when people started to buy the rumor that maybe Elon was getting into Bitcoin. That's when I knew the price would skyrocket, which is exactly what ended up happening. In Q4 of 2020, that's when Tesla and Elon bought Bitcoin, but the world didn't officially know about it until the SEC filing, which was February 8th, 2021. And check out what happened to the price. Bitcoin opened the day of the tweet at $23,000, but by the time it was officially announced on February 8th, Bitcoin was up to $48,000. It more than doubled. So in the span of a little over a month, did people really spend over 400?
That to me just seems like it was just hyped up, kind of like the whole Dogecoin thing that Elon did as well. Like, it just sounds like hype.
$30 billion on Bitcoin to double its price? There is no way that happened. The real dollar amount was a lot lower, and to figure it out would be impossible without knowing each and every single transaction, but theoretically, it would be as little as 10 to 20% of its market cap, which means instead of needing $20 trillion, we might only need $2 to $4 trillion in inflows to make $1 million Bitcoin possible. Now, as of right now, that averages out to 96 months in the next 8 years, which would break that down to $21 billion a month, which is still a lot of money, but it's a lot more doable than what we had before. And just for comparison, right now, we are inflowing about $2 billion a month, and that's being very favorable to Bitcoin, which means we are off by a factor of 10. So that means it's gonna be pretty impossible to get to that point in the next 8 years. Or will it? There are some catalysts that might make it happen. Please keep in mind that some of these are completely subjective, but they're relatively conservative in
Yeah, this is not financial advice, just a heads up.
relation to what they are. But within the next 8 years, Bitcoin will either completely disrupt or play at least a conservative role inside of these 8 major markets. Credits to Yassine on Twitter for this one, and the first is the remittance market. This is where we send money from one country to another like we did to help Ukraine. This is slow, it's expensive, it's closed on weekends, and Bitcoin is undeniably the better system than we have today.
XRP.
If Bitcoin can capture 50% of the remittance market, that would add roughly $300 billion to its market cap, or $14,000 a coin. Number 2 is a big one. This is the emerging market currencies. This is referring to what's called the M2 supply of money. This is all things like cash, physical coins, checking, savings accounts. In other words, money that is easy to convert. And the emerging part is referring to countries that are transitioning from development to modernization. A good example is the Chinese renminbi, the Russian ruble, the Brazilian real, the Indian rupee, things like that. This is where Bitcoin could be a good proposition for store of value. Now, if Bitcoin can capture 10% of the global market here, this would add $2.8 trillion, or roughly $133,000 a coin to the value of Bitcoin, and that's excluding the top 4 countries of emerging currencies. The third is the Economic Settlement Network.
So yeah, there's a lot of countries that, they don't have any dollars, and they're going to use cryptocurrency as a way to get out of poverty, as far as like Venezuela and some of these other countries. So that's actually pretty interesting too, because some of these countries, but the thing about these other countries too, they're not only investing in Bitcoin, which is what I'm saying. Like, Bitcoin isn't the only cryptocurrency. There's a ton of them. So it's just going to be real interesting.
This is where banks send money to each other, and all of this happens digitally, but at some point they'll want to settle in a final currency, which is usually the dollar, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a digital currency like Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin could capture just 25% of the market share here, that would add $3.8 trillion or $181,000 a coin. A fourth market is nation-state treasury, and you can think of this as the cash reserves of a country or like its little emergency fund. And if Bitcoin can capture just 1% of the global market here, that would add another $3.8 trillion or $181,000 a coin. A fifth catalyst is HNWIs, high net worth individuals. If those people held 5% of their assets in Bitcoin, that would add another $4 trillion to the market cap, or roughly $190,000 a coin. A sixth catalyst is institutional investment. These are people like BlackRock. And if only 2.5% of their assets were held in Bitcoin, that would add another $4.1 trillion to the market cap, or roughly $196,000 a coin. A seventh market is corporate treasury bonds.
Yeah, I mean, if all of this works out, that'd be beautiful for Bitcoin holders. I think you might add a 20 trillion you was talking about.
This is where companies raise capital by creating some debt, and if only 5% of their money was held in Bitcoin here, that would add $4.2 trillion to the market cap, or roughly $200,000 to the value of Bitcoin. And finally, 8, that would be gold. If Bitcoin can reach half of gold's market cap at $5.5 trillion, that would add $260,000 to the value of Bitcoin.
I mean, half of gold, I feel like that's a little reach. But the thing about it is, most of our generation were investing in cryptocurrencies, but a lot of the older generations, no offense to them, but the people that are dying off, they're not investing in these cryptocurrencies. They don't understand it, and they're just leaving their money in gold. But I feel like for Bitcoin to become as valuable as it will be, then the value of gold would obviously have to go down. So that's going to be interesting to see as well.
Now, obviously, a lot of this is very subjective, and we can play with the math and spin the numbers however we want, but we could probably both agree that this is relatively conservative. It's not assuming that Bitcoin is going to take over the world. But altogether, the grand total market cap would be $28.5 trillion, which would imply a Bitcoin price of $1.36 million. Some people say $28.5 trillion is just impossible because it is too big. But to put that in perspective for you,
that's what they said about the internet.
That is still way less than the global value of the equity market. That's the stock market, which is valued at $106 trillion. That would still be much less than the global supply of M2 money, which is $123 trillion. That is still way less than the global value of the bond market, which is $124 trillion. And that is still almost 10 times less than the global value of real estate at $220 trillion. So suddenly, when you put it in that perspective, $28.5 trillion doesn't sound all that impossible, especially over the next 8 years. So the next question is, should you buy Bitcoin before it hits $1 million? And the answer is absolutely not. Bitcoin is obviously a bubble, according to 3 and 4 professional investors from a Bank of America survey.
Bank of America, cap.
The guys from the Big Short movie think Bitcoin is a bubble. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger think Bitcoin is a bubble, but all of those are just their opinions, and they're not giving us any data. Instead, here's some actual useful data to help you figure that out. It's called the Mayer multiple, and it tells you Bitcoin's historical price in relation to its 200-day moving average. It doesn't tell you when to buy or when to sell, it just gives you some historical context. And right now, it's making a pretty good case for buying Bitcoin, because anytime the Mayer multiple was below 2.4, that's when, historically, it's been a good time to buy. Anything above that is expensive. Now, as of right now, at the current price of $42,700, the Mayer multiple is 0.89, so it's approaching 1. Historically, Bitcoin's average has been 1.41, and it's been higher than today's Mayer multiple 76% of the time. So as of right now, we're in that rare period of time where Bitcoin is below its historical average, which doesn't mean you should go to buy it, but it does mean if you believe Bitcoin will reach $1 million someday, now might be a good time to start dollar cost averaging, which is kind of crazy to think about that people in 2017 were upset about buying Bitcoin at $20,000 when now it's sitting in the 40s. I feel like now we all wish we could buy Bitcoin at $20,000, and I think that's going to continue to be true with each and every cycle. And by 2030, I don't believe that Bitcoin is going to replace banking. It's not going to replace the dollar, and it will not replace gold, and it doesn't have to. All it needs is a little market share from a couple different industries, which is exactly what's happening right now.
I think that's really interesting. I kind of agree with it. The only thing is there's also a whole bunch of other cryptocurrencies who want to be the top dog as well. So we're really just going to have to sit back and wait and see. Oh, he only had a little bit left, so let's let him close this out and I'll get my final thoughts.
To get us to $1 million. Everything is going exactly as it was planned. I don't know whose plan it was, but I like the plan. Let's stick with it. As always, have a wonderful rest of your day. Smash.
So yeah, no, I just thought that was pretty interesting. He did make some points, except for the fact that I feel like is going to be a lot of competition when it comes to whoever's going to be the top dog in the cryptocurrency market, because they have these cryptocurrencies, like just coming out, and people like everybody believes in these individual projects. So I do feel like maybe the older generation will probably, when they finally decide to get onto cryptocurrency, they'll feel safe putting their money in Bitcoin. But other people like millennials who have already been putting their money in crypto, I just think like they're going to diversify their money. And I don't know if Bitcoin is going to be as big as people believe it will be in the future, but we'll see. That's all I got for you. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'm out. Low on my fitted.